I'd like to introduce you to the person most likely to be elected president next November, Warren Sanders. This is a composite, of course, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Although there are differences between these two individuals, I'm putting them together for the purpose of making a simple point. These two have most of the grassroots energy, most of the enthusiasm, and most of the ideas that are critical for winning in 2020.
Dream big, fight hard, and win.
Most importantly, both Warren and Sanders understand that our system is rigged and that economic and political power must be reallocated from a corporate Wall Street elite to the vast majority. This is why both Warren and Sanders are hated by the corporate Wall Street wing of the Democratic Party, which is now pouring money into the campaigns of some of their opponents in the Democratic primaries. It's also why much of the corporate press is ignoring the enthusiasm they are generating, and why it's picking apart proposals like a wealth tax and Medicare for all as if they were specific pieces of legislation. And it's why corporate and Wall Street Democrats have mounted a campaign to make you believe that Warren and Sanders are too far to the left to beat Trump, and therefore, quote, unelectable. This is total rubbish. In fact, it's Warren or Sanders who have the best chance of beating Trump. That's because presidential elections are determined by turnout. Over a third of eligible voters don't even vote. They go to the polls if they're motivated. And in modern America, what motivates people most is a candidate who stands for average people and against power and privilege. Left, right, moderate, these terms are no longer relevant. The real divide in America today is establishment versus anti-establishment. The comparatively few at the top who have siphoned off much of the wealth of this nation versus average Americans whose wages have gone nowhere. Average Americans know corporate profits are at record highs and that CEOs and Wall Street executives are pocketing record pay and bonuses. They know that big money has been flooding Washington and state capitals to cut taxes on corporations and the wealthy, to subsidize oil and gas, big pharma, Wall Street, and military contractors, to roll back health, safety, environment, and labor protections, and to allow big business to monopolize the economy, using its market power to keep prices high and wages low, which is why they want to elect someone who is on their side. In 2016, some of these Americans voted for Donald Trump because they were disgusted with all of this, and Trump conned them into believing he was on their side. Of course, since he's been elected, he's given big corporations and Wall Street everything they've wanted, a giant $2 trillion tax cut that's mostly boosted stock prices and executive pay, while nothing has trickled down. Trump is enough of a con man, he's still fooling millions of people into thinking he's on their side, and that the sources of their problems are immigrants, minorities, cultural elites, and deep state bureaucrats, rather than a system that's rigged for the benefit of those at the top. But not all Trump supporters are falling for this. Many would join with most other Americans and vote for someone else in 2020 who actually took on the powerful and privileged, which is where Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders come in. Their core proposals would make the system work for everyone. Medicare for all, based on a single payer rather than private, for-profit corporate insurance. A Green New Deal to create millions of good jobs fighting climate change. Free public higher education. Universal child care. All financed mainly by a tax on the super rich. They'd also get big money out of politics and rescue our democracy from the corporate and Wall Street elites who now control it. They are the only candidates who are relying on small donations rather than trolling for big handouts from corporations, Wall Street, and the wealthy. And by the way, they are not billionaires who are self-financing their campaigns. Both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are best positioned to beat Trump and alter the power structure in America so we don't invite more demagogues like Trump in the future. Only two things stand in the way. The first is the power structure itself. which is trying to persuade Democrats that neither Warren or Sanders can defeat Trump, and that Democrats should put up a milquetoast moderate instead, which, if they succeed, will increase the odds Trump gets a second term. The second danger is that as the primary season heats up, supporters of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders will wage war on each other, and that will take both of them down. Now, it's true that only one of them can be the Democratic nominee, but as long as the backers of both of them eventually come together behind one of them, we will have the votes to take the White House and even flip the Senate and begin the work of making this great nation work for the many rather than the few. Look, there are many good Democratic candidates, and any one of them would make a far better president than Trump. Hell, a used car would make a better president than Trump. But our odds of beating Trump are best with either Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, as is our chance to make America the nation it should be and can be.